I find I would spend. I used to spend money on this is weird, guys, but this is I need to say this. I spend money on CBD oil, which is a way of relaxing and a way of keeping my mind a bit more measured, and um, meditation and listening to Dharma does that. So um, I no longer have CBT oil, but I very happily donate it to Bhante because it, it's really it's worth it, you know. It's really simple. Um, I don't see that as generous. I see that as kind of formally normal. Um, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
it's good to be generous, but you just don't want to miss out on the value and the merit making that's at the heart of your practice, right? So
I don't.
it's not that you're you're paying for something, but you're really you're really practicing generosity, and it's something that you're doing to let go, um, and you're giving up something of value, not as an exchange, but as a giving up, right?
See. I have.
As a sharing itself.
I have to watch myself because I have a tendency to just give everything away, and
Yeah,
that's. I actually have to um, stop myself, and I have to discuss anything I do with my husband because if it was me, um, it just things would be very different. It sounds really weird, but and I feel a bit embarrassed admitting that because I feel it makes me feel sound like a simpleton, but I'm not. I consider myself extremely lucky and fortunate, and I think it's really positive and powerful to give give out what just to give. I think it's very very good. It makes me feel really good. Um, you know, bottom line. Sorry, I'm babbling away. I never planned. I'm sorry.
it's
I
okay.
just,
It's all right. And we just went live, so we're giving some people the time to join in, to join us, and um, 25, 6. I need to change something in the settings, and then we'll get started together. So, oh, and the thing that I wanted to say, and you really you said it so beautifully again, is that we have to be careful with how we're applying ourselves and how we're expressing that generosity. It's not just that we kind of give until we're a mess, or we overgive, or we practice meditation until we're a mess, but it's that we really do our best to take care of our life, and through that taking care of our life, we know how much to practice. We know when to back off, and we know when to step into it, and to really embody it. And and that's the focus that we're doing here. And
thank
if
you.
yeah, and if you know that you're in even a more particularly sensitive situation, you have even more responsibility to really be mindful of taking care, and to really be careful about these practices. Um, the teacher of the retreat that I was attending, he was talking about that the thing in meditation and coming into Buddhist teachings, the idea often comes up of, well, doesn't meditation cause some kind of disruption or distress, or it messes with us? And he was saying that usually it's not quite that. Usually the situation is that we have suffering, or we have underlying conditions. We have an underlying situation that we're dealing with, and through meditation it comes up, and there was a saying that he said about, or no, he told a story about his teacher, the head teacher of him. Um, and we've read from this teacher's books, and we've watched some of his videos together, Master Sheng Yen. So Master Sheng Yen, there was a story about he had a disciple who was talking to him about, I had this deep meditation and I looked through my body and I saw that this organ needed that and this organ needed that, and there's this chi disruption, there are all these things going on. And he said to him, look, if you need to go and see a doctor, go to a doctor. If you're sick, go to a doctor. If you need therapy, go to a therapist. If you need to calm down, calm down. But something that I found in my method during this retreat, because I also have suffering and I have things that come up for me in my meditation, especially in these intensive retreats. What I found is to really bring together that compassion, that sincerity, that heart in the method. So it's not just that we're drilling into ourselves with this concentration, but as we fall off, as we get distracted, as we get into this tight space, take a deep breath, bring in that gentleness, that compassion, and making that a really big part of our practice as well. So it's a time to really be gentle with ourselves, to be compassionate with ourselves, to be patient with ourselves, right? And in that way, you don't have to brutalize yourself by staying in a meditation session. I've got to get through this, but also don't give up on yourself. And you know better than anyone else your balance points and your friction points, and that's what you should work with, right? And we support one another to do that. Okay, so I'm going to change a setting, do a technical thing here in OBS. It's not going to affect our Discord call, but it will affect the live stream. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm about to reset the live stream, and then we'll get started with our group meditation and our reading. So just bear with me for one moment. I'll reset the stream, and I have to fix a setting. So we will be live in one moment. I just reset the stream. I didn't even have to reset the stream, so we're still live. And I apologize to all my sincere friends and meditators for taking up your time with the technicalities and all that, the distractions. But over time, as I get used to it, I'm able to make it more fluid and less disruptive. So if you are watching, you can join through the YouTube as well, and that's where you have a nice high definition stream, and should be quite nice. Okay, so before we officially begin, let me go and grab something. I will come right back, and then we'll get started. All right? Maybe you can light some incense at this time. Oh, I think if you've been watching on YouTube, you haven't been able to hear me, but now I have the microphone. So be right back. Okay, everyone. So today we're going to start with a lovely reading. Of course, we're really starting gathering here, right? We're here together as a community, and that's very clear. That's very on the nose. So that's where we're starting. And from that place, we're going to take a look at a reading together. So, a moment. Okay. So we take a look at this reading together with Buddhist tones. Really, I don't know what this reading is going to be. I can't tell you. I don't I don't know, but I have a trust. So we will trust it together and we'll see, who comes out in a good way. We'll have to find out. So this reading is called Lundiria, the Tale of a Journey to Another Land, Courage and Compassion by Venerable Wu Ling and illustrated by Anne-Marie Napoli. So there'll also be some illustrations here that we'll be able to look at. And here's the book. You can see the first illustration right here. And Venerable Wu Ling is an American Buddhist nun. Okay, and I have a good feeling about her, but we'll have to look for ourselves. And she is of the Pure Land school. So this Pure Land school has this idea that through our kind of sincere practice of chanting the Buddha's name, but a kind of sincere chanting and recitation, we can enter into the Pure Land. And the Pure Land is this place where the causes and conditions are just right. They are totally ideal for practice, and we can very quickly and vividly make our way to peace and to total enlightenment. We can really transform our own suffering in a big way very quickly. So for Pure Land practitioners, a big part of their practice is to do as their method this chanting of the Buddha's name. So they chant the Amitofo, and they can chant it so beautifully. On my retreat that I was just at, wow, we had the most beautiful chanting. We all harmonizing together, and you hear the notes, and you can match them and meet them. Is a beautiful practice. So I really appreciate the Pure Land School. They have a lot to offer. So the preface to this book, and this might not be for everybody, but we're going to read it. So if it's not for you, that's what it is, but this is what we're going to do today. So this is the preface. Over the past few years, people in the Pure Land societies, or groups of people who follow this school, have occasionally asked me if we had any children's books on being vegetarian. And in Mahayana Buddhism, in this particular tradition of Buddhism, vegetarianism is a really deep standard. It's a deep expectation. And so for monastics, they would not eat meat. And they wouldn't be offered any kind of meat, because when you eat meat, when you support meat eating, when you buy meat, whatever that might be, you're supporting an industry, and you're supporting the act of an animal being slaughtered, a life being taken for you, for your behalf. And so naturally for a monastic, that would be totally inappropriate. Go and kill this animal and give it to me. So it's big in that side of Buddhism. So personally, I wish we did, because like those asking, I am a vegetarian. Unfortunately, the conditions had never been right for such a book. But that was about to change dramatically. Late one night, while I was at the Amitabha Buddhist Retreat Center, I became seriously ill. Understanding that this was my karma catching up with me, or my cause and effect, my conditions catching up with me, my responsibility, my thoughts. So taking responsibility for that suffering, understanding that, my thoughts went to the suffering I had caused. So taking responsibility for what we're able to take responsibility for at that moment. I vowed to do something to alleviate suffering. How? I would write a book. A few days later, I roughed out the idea for what was to become Lundirya. When I had finished the project I was working on, one beautiful spring day in Nanango, I returned to Lundirya, and in a very short time, Justin and Emma's story was told. At that point, all I had was the text, and over the years, I once again wished that I knew an artist. Surely drawings would enhance this book, but how to find the illustrator I needed? A few months later, I had the good fortune to be introduced to Anne Marie Napoli. I lose my Bluetooth connection here, so. Can hear me all right in the Discord? Is clear? A talented illustrator. She graciously and enthusiastically volunteered to draw what became the wonderful illustrations that would help make this book come alive and hopefully touch the heart. And if the heart is touched, it might begin to wonder about some of the choices we make and how these choices affect others. We do not have to be adults to ask these questions. We just need to have a caring heart. All right, so part 1, the dream, or the dreams. We'll start with the illustration here. This is depicting living beings. So the dreams. No one was sure exactly when the dreams began. At first, no one paid much attention to them. After all, they were just dreams. But gradually, as more animals had them, they began to talk about their dreams and how similar they were. Now, we can listen to this like bedtime stories with Bhante, so we're not, that's the theme. So you can listen in that way. It's not my usual kind of maybe a complex adding things on. I'm just going to be bedtime stories. That should be the title of the stream. But anyway, so with that in mind, chapter 1, the dreams. No one was sure exactly when the dreams began. At first, no one paid much attention to them. After all, they were just dreams. But gradually, as more animals had them, they began to talk about their dreams and how similar they were. The animals seemed to be dreaming of another land. No one knew for sure because they didn't recognize it. But in the dreams, the name of the land was always the same. The land was called Earth. In many ways, Earth was like the animals' own beloved Lundirya. There were birds and fish and insects and many other kinds of animals. There were trees and flowers and mountains and seas. In fact, there was really only one difference, an animal that was not found on Lundirya. Earth had an animal called humans. Unlike on Lundirya, where all the animals shared equal status, humans were the sole rulers on Earth. And on Earth, because of the humans, something was wrong. Those Lundiryans who had the dreams could feel it.
but they couldn't figure out what the problem was. As more and more animals dreamed of Earth, the Lunderian Council began to hear about it. But even the wise council members didn't know why Lunderians were dreaming of a land called Earth and its creatures called humans. So the council members decided to hold a meeting to discuss what was happening. After all, they had always solved their problems by talking and working together. And so news of the meeting was sent throughout the land. The swifts and the eagles cried out word of it as they flew through the sky. The leopards and antelopes announced it as they ran through the forests, valleys, and mountains. The whales and the salmon sang of the meeting as they swam in the seas and rivers. Even the badgers and groundhogs rumbled out the message deep underground. All the creatures of Lunderia were asked to come to a meeting of the utmost importance. As usual, no one was to be left out. Used to helping one another, all of the animals of Lunderia began the journey. They traveled as if one to the ancient volcano crater that served as Lunderia's assembly place. The birds flew and the land animals walked, hopped, and ran. The reptiles crawled and the fish swam. The insects came as well. Those who were younger and stronger carried those who were older and weaker. Larger or faster Lunderians helped those who were smaller or slower. By land, air, and water they all came. Land animals sat on the ground and the rocks. The birds perched in the trees, butterflies on the bushes, and insects in the grass. The creatures of the water swam into the crater's lake from the great sea that was fed by all the rivers in Lunderia. As they all settled down in the volcano crater, waiting for the meeting to start, they talked of little else but the dreams. What was this meeting about? Oh, was this what the meeting was about? So what do we think? Anyone have an idea? Do you think this meeting is about the dreams, or what could this meeting be about? Anyone have an idea? Nino, what do you think? Hold on, let's see what Nino, you think this meeting is about the dreams?
I think so. I think it's the dreams.
Me too. And chapter 2, I get to see the title, so I kind of it alluded to that. Chapter 2, Dream Seekers. When at last everyone was settled and quiet, the council members came to the center of the crater. They took their places and the meeting began. Being the oldest member of the council, the tortoise spoke first. He walked in a dignified manner to the spot reserved for the speaker. In a deep, strong voice he began. My dear fellow Lunderians, some of you may already know why this meeting has been called. For a while now, we have been hearing reports of dreams. These are not ordinary dreams. They are not dreams of what happened during the day or of friends and family. Apparently, these are not even dreams of life here on Lunderia. These are dreams of another land, a land called Earth. Needless to say, this is all very strange. How can so many of our fellow citizens be dreaming of the same things? We have heard that in dreams there are creatures like us, animals, fish, birds, reptiles, and insects. As Tortoise spoke, the listeners nodded their heads in agreement. Soft murmurs and the rustling of many creatures being together were the only sounds coming from the audience. There does seem to be one difference, however. In the dreams, there is an animal who appears to be causing problems. Very serious problems. But very honestly, my friends, it's confusing. How can these animals, which we have heard being called humans, cause so much trouble? It's hard to understand because we know nothing of this animal. It does not exist here. Many of you are having the same dreams. How can that be happening? And why is it happening? It must mean something, but what? And what, if anything, can we do about the dreams? We members of the council have given this matter much serious thought. We have decided that there is only one way open to us. We will try to find the answers to these questions using an ancient practice. My fellow Lundirians, the problem is dreams, so we will seek the answers through dreams. We will engage in dream seeking. We take a look here, a picture, illustration. A tortoise talking to all the animals of the land that are there. Okay. The Lundirians looked at one another in disbelief. Tortoise continued, "My friends, dream seeking, as you all know, has been done only once in all of Lundiria's long history. It was done at the time of great danger and much fear. It was a time of uncertainty, the time before peace between all animals, all Lundirians, became our way of life. My friends, a sense of unease is again entering our lives. We all feel it. We need to quickly find out what is happening. Then, hopefully, we will know what we can do about it." With this, Tortoise returned to his place among the other council members. He nodded to Gazelle, who walked gracefully forward to stand before the assembly. In a warm, lifting voice, she began, "Dearest friends, once we saw that we had to do dream seeking, we realized we would need someone to guide us. We would need a creature who is of the night, a creature used to calling out when most others were dreaming, someone skilled at catching and holding our thoughts with her songs. We need Nightingale." As Gazelle looked up, Nightingale flew down, passed over Gazelle's head, and perched on a nearby tree branch. She sang one long, beautiful note, her voice clear and pure. It was heard by every Lundirian. With Nightingale singing to us, everyone will fall asleep. Everyone, that is, but Nightingale and myself. She will place moss in my ears so that I cannot hear her singing. This way, I will be able to stay awake to see what happens. When the time is right for all of you to wake up, Nightingale will stop singing. But my friends, I must first ask, is there anyone who does not wish to join in the dreaming? No one is required to do so, but please understand that for this to work, we need as many dream seekers as possible. Frankly, we are worried that something is very wrong. We do not know what it is. We do not know what we will learn in our dream seeking. But everyone on the council feels we must find out. We fear that some being desperately needs our help. And even worse, we fear that many beings may be in need of our help. Gazelle stopped talking. looked out over the assembly and waited patiently for their answers. The crater was filled with the murmuring of all the creatures of Landiria. Gradually the sounds faded away until all was perfectly silent. Dearest friends, are there any among you who do not wish to be a part of the dreaming? Gazelle asked. No one said no. No one shook their head. Not one Lundirian left the assembly. Gazelle turned and looked at Nightingale, as did everyone else. We have another illustration here of Nightingale with Gazelle. First, Nightingale carefully placed some moss in Gazelle's ears so she would stay awake. Then Nightingale closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. She sang of the beauty of the night. She sang of the courage and concern of all her friends. She sang of the peace of Landiria and the happiness of all who lived there. Then Nightingale began to sing of sleeping and of dreaming. Finally she sang of earth and those who lived there. Soon, with the sole exception of Gazelle and Nightingale, every living creature on Landiria was dreaming. Through the night they all slept as one. They dreamed of earth. And throughout that long night, Nightingale sang and guided them in their dreaming. So Nightingale singing, guiding all of Landiria in their dreaming. We can't stop now. We're just starting to get invested. We're already to chapter 3. Anyone have an idea of what might happen next? Any thought? Okay, I can honestly say I don't know what's about to happen, but we're going to find out. Chapter 3, Strangers in Landiria. As the first rays of the sun began to lighten the sky, it happened. As Gazelle shook the moss from her ears, Nightingale sang more softly and then became quiet. The Landirians ceased dreaming and began to wake up. The air next to Gazelle started to shimmer. As she and Nightingale and all of Landiria watched, the shimmering started to become solid. The animals saw form and color taking shape, disappearing, and then coming together again, more clear than before. This happened several times. Then the form and color shimmered brightly one last time, swirled as if in a tiny whirlwind, and settled to reveal two unmoving shapes. And let's take a look at what those shapes are. So we have some, it looks like some new guests in Landiria. It seemed as if everyone on Landiria was holding their breath. Indeed, in all the land, the only breathing seemed to be coming from the two forms who lay in front of them. Suddenly from the assembly, a voice called out, "I've seen such animals before in my dreams. Those are humans." The dream-seeking had really worked? Were these humans? But they looked so innocent. How could creatures like these cause problems? And how did they get here? How could dreams produce forms? Dreams are just that, dreams. But these creatures appear very real. And since they appear very real and very alive, what happens now? Gazelle called out, "Be quiet, my friends. Please be quiet as we think what to do now." But it was too late. The two shapes had begun to move. But not like before, when they had shimmered and changed. This time, the shapes moved as solid wholes. Everyone in the assembly drew back. It looked as if the human creatures were waking up. Tortoise came forward to stand next to Gazelle. Nightingale flew in and landed lightly on one of the humans. After a moment, one of the humans sat up. As he opened his eyes and then stared in delight at Nightingale, he said, "Emma, wake up! There's a bird on your arm." The human named Emma stretched, also opened her eyes and sat up. She didn't notice a bird, but she saw a gazelle and a tortoise, and that wasn't all. There were other animals standing behind the gazelle and the tortoise. She was too scared to move. All she could do was to point and stammer, "Justin, look." But Justin didn't turn to look where Emma was pointing. He couldn't. He too was frozen as he looked out on a sea of animals, all staring back at him. Seeing that the two humans were alarmed, Nightingale hopped to Emma's shoulder and began to sing a soothing song. Gazelle began to softly speak. "Please don't be afraid. We mean you no harm." Gazelle's eyes were so warm and gentle that Emma felt herself begin to breathe again. And the way Nightingale blinked her brown eyes and cocked her head made Justin smile a bit in spite of his fear. "That's better. Are you okay? You're not hurt in any way, are you?" Gazelle's soothing voice seemed to further calm the two humans. But even so, all they could do was shake their heads in reply. "My name is Gazelle. This is Tortoise. And the bird on your shoulder is called Nightingale. Am I to understand that you are a Justin and that you are an Emma?" Gazelle looked from one to the other as she said their names. By now, Justin was also staring at Gazelle. "Uh-huh," he said as he nodded his head. "Yes," added the other, "I'm Emma. This is my brother Justin," she managed to add. "I'm very happy to meet you. We've never met a Justin or an Emma before." Gazelle replied as she gazed serenely back at the two, who stared open-mouthed at her. "Wait a minute. You're talking? How? Animals can't talk." Justin's curiosity was winning out over his fear. "Animals can't talk in your world? In our world, animals can talk just like we are doing." Gazelle took a deep breath. This was going to take a bit of explaining. "You are humans, right?" Gazelle asked. "Of course," Justin replied, somewhat confused. How could anyone not know they were humans? Curious himself, and sensing that Justin and Emma were getting over their initial shock, Tortoise asked, "Please excuse my ignorance, but are all humans like you?" Unsure what he meant, Emma replied, "Well, yes, but we're children, not adults. Is that what you mean? We're twins, actually." Emma then looked at Gazelle. When you referred to our world, you meant the animal world, right?" "In a way," Gazelle answered. Nightingale spoke next. "Our world is an animal world, yes, but it's more than that. Our world is called Lundiria. I don't want to shock you any more than I'm afraid we already have. I have to ask, is your world called Earth? The children were again speechless. Justin managed to blurt out, Our world? Are you saying this isn't Earth? Are you saying we're on another planet? Emma squeaked. Yes, dear. Lundiria is another planet. Have you never heard of it? From the children's faces, the Lundirians realized the children hadn't. The animals all held their breath, waiting to see how the two small humans would react to this news. Cool! Suddenly laughed both children. The Lundirians were greatly relieved. Also, they were rather impressed. The two children were remarkably okay with the fact they were on another planet. How did we get here? Justin asked. We dreamed you here, replied Nightingale. Super cool, giggled the two children. What do you mean dreamed? How did you dream us here and why? Well, it's a rather long story, Tortoise replied. And with that, he began to tell Justin and Emma how the dream started, how confused and worried the Lundirians had become, and how they all dreamed together and the two human children appeared. After listening to all this, Justin said, But we still don't know why we're here. Thoughtfully, Gazelle spoke. We dreamed you here because we sensed trouble in your world. We felt much fear there. That's not something we often feel in our world. If something unusual happens, we might become anxious, but the fear we felt from your world seemed much more than that. Oh, Justin and Emma looked at each other. They were also at a loss to explain what was going on. Trying to be helpful, Justin spoke up. Well, sure, there's fear in our world, but that's normal. Things can happen and people get scared, but it's okay in the end. Things work out. It's no big deal, right, Emma? Emma looked thoughtful and then said, Justin, wait a minute. We're humans, so we are thinking of human fear. But the Lundirians are animals. Maybe they're talking about animal fear. So it's, very, really wrings my heart about to consider it like that. And chapter 4 is called the Terrible Truth. Suddenly, both children became very quiet. Gone was their laughter. Gone their thinking that being on Lundiria was cool. The color had drained from their faces. They looked what? Embarrassed? Scared? Emma moved closer to Justin, reached out for his hand and held onto it. She stared at the ground while Justin tried to speak, but now he was having trouble doing so. Finally, he spoke very softly. I think we might know what fear you felt. Our parents have told us about it. Since you're all animals, and you feel the problem comes from humans, His voice trailed off. He couldn't speak anymore. All around Emma and him were animals like they had on Earth. There was tortoise, gazelle, and nightingale. There were also elephants and monkeys and sparrows. and frogs and dolphins, and so many more animals just like at home. Well, no, not just like at home. Here the animals talked, and looking around, Justin and Emma could see that all the animals got along peacefully. There were animals as far as they could see, and yet every single one of them was acting like they were all friends. The crater was filled with animals of every size and shape and kind. But no one was fussing at others. No one was hurting anyone else. Emma looked at Gazelle. She spoke so softly that Gazelle could barely hear her. Gazelle, what do the animals on Landiria eat? Gazelle looked a bit puzzled, but replied, well, the land animals eat things like grass, nuts, and fruit. The birds eat seeds and grain. The sea animals eat plants that grow in the water like algae. Why do you ask? Oh, are you hungry? I'm so sorry. We shouldn't have kept you talking so much without offering you something to eat. That's terrible of us. Please pardon our bad manners. We'd be very happy to get something for you if you tell us what humans eat. Justin felt like his heart was pounding so hard that the animals must be able to hear it. He couldn't bear to look at Gazelle. He shook his head and mumbled, "We're not hungry, thank you." The animals were puzzled. Why were the children so upset? Her eyes glistening with tears, Emma said in a whisper, "We are so very sorry. I don't know how to tell you. In our world, some people, like our parents and us, eat only plants and nuts and fruit and stuff. But others, then like her brother, she too became speechless." I have another illustration here. Gazelle looked at the two. Suddenly, a feeling of dread unlike anything she had ever felt came over her. "Children, what else do humans eat?" she asked hoarsely. Tears filled the children's eyes and began to slowly run down their cheeks. Neither could say a word. "No, oh no," Gazelle whispered. Then she collapsed, shaking her head in disbelief. "Please, children, please tell me it's not so," she pleaded. The children could not speak. With profound grief, Gazelle said the one word she dreaded to. "Animals?" Both children nodded, tears now streaming down their faces. Gazelle had spoken very softly, and yet every animal had heard her, and like Gazelle, they all knew why they had felt such fear. On a distant world, where humans ruled and animals had no way to speak, humans ate animals. At that moment, a sense of disbelief, of grief, overwhelmed every Landirian. They were speechless, unable to believe what they had heard. No, it couldn't be. It just wasn't possible. The children had to be wrong. Chapter 5, in ancient time. Tortoise bowed his head. He knew what he had to do. He began to speak to the assembly, slowly at first, as he carefully chose his words. My dear fellow Lunderians, please listen to me very carefully. What I am about to say will be new to every one of you. Most of you have probably heard tales about dream seeking. It is said that it had been done before, but only once. It was in a time so far in our past that all that remains from that period are whisperings of the way things were. And that is probably all that you ever heard of dream seeking. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath. Tortoise looked at their expectant faces and continued. Actually, my friends, there is more. A very long time ago, wise elders decided that what happened in the ancient past, the time before records were written, had to remain a secret. From generation to generation, the secret would be passed from one animal to just one other. And so it has happened since that time far in the past. It was decided when I was still quite young that I would become the next keeper of the secret. As did every past keeper, I took an oath of honor that I would only reveal the secret in a time of extreme emergency. An emergency so grave that dream seeking would need to be done again. My friends, it is now time to tell you of what led to the first dream seeking. It happened in a time when our world was very young, and the animals, our ancestors, were very ignorant and selfish. It was a time of terrible fear and sorrow. Why was there such great fear and sorrow? With much sadness, I must tell you the secret that the keepers hoped no future Lunderians would ever learn. I have a picture here of a tortoise. Why was there such great fear and sorrow? With much sadness, I must tell you. In a time of ignorance and cruelty, our ancestors ate other animals. It was as if Lunderia herself gasped in horror. Animals had eaten one another. How could it be? All the animals on Lunderia lived together in peace. No Lunderian would do that. It would be like eating a family member or a friend. Impossible. It couldn't happen. It just couldn't. As if knowing their thoughts, Tortoise continued, Dear friends, what I am telling you is the truth. It did happen. He sighed deeply, and now it seems that on another world, on the world called Earth, it is happening again. An animal is eating other animals. I do not think the human children are wrong. With a very heavy heart, I feel they have told us a terrible, terrible truth. Tortoise then looked at Justin and Emma. Children, please look at me. We need to clearly hear your answer so no one will doubt what you have said. Is it true that on Earth humans eat animals? Not wanting to say more than they had to, for fear of hurting their new friends, the children looked at Tortoise. They felt miserable, but they knew it was true. Justin and Emma tearfully admitted, yes. And having said that, they looked down again. Gazelle watched the children, sensing that they were still very uneasy. Why? They had told the truth of what happens on Earth, and they explained that they themselves did not eat animals, only plants and things. So why were they crying again and staring at the ground, unable to look at anyone, Could there be an even more terrible, could there be even more to their terrible tale? Justin, Emma, is there something else, something that you haven't told us yet? Gazelle asked cautiously. The two children looked at each other. How could they tell the animals the whole truth? A truth so painful, so awful, that they themselves could hardly bear to think of it. Gazelle closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. She spoke with great sadness. Take your time and know that we will not be upset with you. But I think you need to tell us exactly what is happening on your world. Chapter 6, Life on Earth. Justin and Emma looked at each other, dreading what they knew and did not want to say. How could they tell the Lunderians about what happens on Earth? And yet, having been asked to tell the truth, how could they not? Justin felt a lump in his throat and had to swallow hard. Not knowing what to say first, he just blurted out, "On Earth, many animals, not just humans, eat other animals." The Lunderians gasped. It was an even worse thought than they thought. Animals just like them were eating other animals. It was unthinkable. Emma continued when Justin hesitated. But there are many animals on Earth that eat only plants. It's just that the animals that eat other animals, they just don't know better. And so they kill when they're hungry. They just need something to eat. A groan went up from countless animals around them. First they had learned that humans ate animals. Next they learned that other animals also ate animals. And now they realized that all those animals that were eaten were, of course, killed first. How much worse could the children's tale of Earth get? Justin and Emma didn't know what to say next. The more they tried to explain, the worse things became. They were both beginning to wish they had never awakened on Lunderia. As exciting as it had first seemed, now they were confused and feeling lost. If only Mom and Dad were here, they would know what to do, what to say. That was it. They'd explain it to the Lunderians like Mom and Dad had explained to them. Justin began. On Earth, many animals used to live in the woods and fields, like I guess you do here. Others flew in the sky or swam in the water. When they were hungry, many would catch something and eat it. Humans, too, hunted and fished for their food, and they also ate plants and nuts called seed. But now, people go to one place called a store. It's where they get all their food. And it's so much easier than hunting or fishing. Humans can eat animals whenever they want, since so many animals are raised on factory farms. Emma continued. Nightingale asked, "What is a factory farm? Is it a better place for animals to live than in the woods and rivers?" No way. Justin shook his head and shuddered. Nightingale, how do animals live together here? Asked Emma. Nightingale replied, "We like living together with our families and friends. That way we can look after each other. Young animals can play with one another. Older animals take turns looking after younger ones. Many of us like living in large groups, so we have lots of friends. We live in the woods, the valleys, in oceans and streams, and in the sky. When the weather is bad, we take cover. But mostly we feel the sun on our backs, or the air or water around us. All of this is very natural to us. It's natural to animals on Earth too, Emma said. That's the same way they used to live. But not now? Not on the factory farms? Tortoise asked. No. On factory farms, animals live in buildings. They are sort of like caves, and the animals never see the sky or the ground. Justin replied. That's terrible. Do many animals have to live like this? Gazelle asked. Millions. Billions have to. What's a billion? Tortoise asked. Mom and Dad say it's really a lot. Emma and I couldn't begin to count that high. Even you, counting all your life, couldn't count that high, Justin answered. A tortoise heard this. A single tear rolled slowly down his cheek that was lined with wrinkles. What kind of animals? Asked Gazelle. Well, do you have chickens or turkeys here? Justin asked, looking out at the immense crater that was filled with animals. I'm here. I'm Hen, and this is Rooster, cried out a chicken, as a rooster proudly escorted her to the front of the crowd. Looking first at Hen and then at Justin and Emma, Rooster said, We look after our children together. First, we both scout around and agree on a good place to build a nest. Then I keep watch while their mother here sits on the eggs to keep our children warm before they hatch. I've even caught her clucking to the young ones before they hatch, explained Rooster as he winked at the twins. We love taking baths in the dust and pecking around to find things to eat. I'm here too, gobbled Turkey. Like Hen and Rooster, I love living in a group. The larger, the better. My friends and I love to strut around showing off our feathers. We are very curious and good at solving problems. When we're happy, we purr like the cats. And at night, we fly up into the trees to sleep. Emma looked at the three birds. I am so very sorry. Many chickens on factory farms spend their lives in buildings that seem to go on forever. They never get to peck around or take a bath in the dirt. They don't hatch and raise their children. Most don't even see the sky or breathe fresh air. There are so many packed in together that they don't have enough space to spread their wings. And turkeys are made to eat so much they become fat and can't even fly. Sometimes they are so heavy and sick they can't even walk. And they certainly don't play with friends. On factory farms they don't have friends, Emma quietly said. Hen and Rooster and Turkey froze. No dirt beneath one's feet to explore? No flying in the air with the sun on one's back? It was as if their feathers had suddenly become dull, and the life had gone out of them. Their hearts ached and went out to their kind on earth. Heads drooping, they took only a few steps before they collapsed, unable to move any further. I don't know what to say. I'm just so very, very sorry. Emma bent down to stroke their feathers as she looked into their ears, into their eyes. and apologized for something she herself didn't really understand. Who else? Asked Gazelle, closing her eyes and opening them again as she gave a deep sigh. Do you have ducks and geese? Asked Justin. Duck and goose came forward, but more slowly than hen, rooster, and turkey had. What about their kind, they wondered. Like turkey, we too love to fly. We also love to play and swim in the water and dive to eat the plants growing there. I am very protective. I keep a careful eye on my young until they are old enough to look after themselves, explained Duck. We geese travel far in the sky over long distances. We fly with the seasons to warmer places in the winter and cooler places in the summer. We geese are very loyal. We look after each of our children until they can take care of themselves. When they become sick, we stay with them until they are well. We mate for life and mourn when we lose our spouse, added Goose. Justin swallowed and then spoke softly, barely able to look at Duck and Goose. Ducks and geese are also forced to eat a lot. Like turkeys, they become too fat to fly. Ducks and geese live in fear. Because their lives are so hard, they easily become sick. They don't live long or know the happiness that you know here on Landiria. Duck and goose bowed their heads in shock. Their tears fell to the ground at their feet, and they became very quiet. It was as if they had stopped breathing. They slowly moved to join the others. Gazelle gazed at Justin. His eyes were so sad. She felt his sorrow as strongly as she felt her own. Justin, I know this is very difficult for both of you, and I know you do not want to hurt us, but we must know the truth. And you and Emma are the only ones who can tell us that truth. Emma looked at Justin and took a deep breath. Are there pigs there? She asked. A soft squeal was heard as Pig came forward. I am here. I love living with my parents and all my brothers and sisters. Mothers will carefully build a nest so their babies will be born in a safe area. When we are young, we call for help if we get into trouble. We know our mother will recognize our voice and come as quickly as she can to help us. When we make friends with other pigs, we become friends for life. We all sometimes play in the mud because it keeps us cool in the summer. But other than that, we like being clean. And other animals often ask us for advice, saying that we are very smart. Emma knelt on the ground and gently stroked Pig's head. Pigs are known to be clever on Earth also. They are as smart as 3-year-old human children. How do we live on Earth, Emma? On factory farms like the others? Pig held her breath as she looked up at Emma. It was so hard to answer, to tell the truth. But these caring, peaceful animals honestly wanted to know about their kind a long, long way from here. Yes, Pig. On factory farms, pigs live in big, dark buildings where the air smells terrible. They live in cages so small they can't turn around. These cages are not kept clean. Pigs never get to play with their brothers and sisters in the dirt. Mother pigs do not have their babies in a safe nest, but on concrete, kind of like rock. The little piglets are separated from their mothers when they are just a few weeks old. We have an illustration here. So we just try to be with it. I know this can be really tough to receive this, but it's worth it to receive it and to listen to it and to be with this truth. The piglets cry in terror for their mothers to come, but the mothers are in cages. They can do nothing for their crying babies. Pig gave a sob and then gained control of herself. She went over to hen, rooster, turkey, duck, and goose and lay down with them. The 6 could feel the love from their fellow Lunderians, but even so, their hearts felt numb with sadness over what they had learned. Who else? Asked Tortoise. Sheep? Justin looked again at all the faces before him and saw a beautiful snow-white sheep walking gracefully toward him. Her long lashes almost covered her downcast eyes. I know it was very selfish of me, but I was not hoping to be called, she said, looking up at Justin. I love living with all my friends. The more the merrier. We show care for one another by rubbing our heads together. We have very good memories and can remember many faces for years. Other animals say we are quite clever. Justin sat down cross-legged in front of her and ran his hands over her thick wool coat. On factory farms, sheep are kept in pens with wire mesh bottoms. It's like standing on tiny sticks that are loosely connected. They are kept in buildings all their lives. They never feel the sun on their faces or the grass beneath their feet. I am so sorry, but the babies are taken away from their mothers soon after they are born. Justin pressed his face to Sheep's face, and she rubbed against his. She felt his tears mix with her own. Then she too went slowly to join the others, where she sank tearfully to the ground. Are there cows here? Emma didn't know how much longer she could do this. A large brown cow moved carefully through the crowd so she wouldn't harm any of the smaller creatures. She had a single white mark which ran from between her eyes down her face. Her eyes, as dark as chocolate, were fixed on Emma's blue eyes. We cows are very social. We stay together with family and friends all our lives. We live in fields where we can lazily chew the grass. We often groom others, especially if they are upset. We have very good memories and can remember a lot about where we live and how to find what we want. When our children are young, we mothers gather all the young ones into a group and take turns looking after them. This way, the other mothers can go eat. With a tear in her eye, she continued, if something happens to one of us, all the others become very sad. What about us, Emma? Emma stretched up to put her arms around Cow's neck, but she was too short, so she stroked Cow's face instead. Cows too. Mothers and their children are also separated a day or two after the babies are born. Cows are crowded in with so many others that they have no freedom. They easily become sick. Since there are too many to care for, the humans keep giving them medicine. It's supposed to make them better, but it often just causes other problems. Cows, too, often stand on concrete, not grass or the ground. Instead of the grass that cows love to eat, they are only given corn because it makes them fat. In grief for her kind on earth, Cow bowed her head. Emma stood on tiptoe to gently kiss the white mark on Cow's face. Then Cow slowly turned to join the others. Who else? Tortoise asked huskily. Sea creatures. They too are now beginning to be raised on factory farms. Justin peered into the water that was in the crater's pond and saw countless fish in the deep water. He saw tunas, shrimp, lobsters, trout, and others. He looked at Tortoise, all of them, and many more. Once our world had loads of these and other sea creatures, but so many were caught that now there are fewer and fewer. Dolphin swam to the edge of the pond where Justin was standing and looked deep into Justin's eyes. If he didn't know better, he would have thought Dolphin was crying. But dolphins can't cry, can they? Justin continued, most people don't know that fish can feel pain. They are very aware. They can even sense what is around them without touching it. Thank you, children. We have heard enough. Now we know what is happening on the world called Earth, announced Tortoise. So we're going to get through it. We're through most of the book now, and we're going to go ahead and get through it and take this as our practice. Chapter 7, Hope for Earth. It was done. Justin and Emma had told the Lunderians what they needed to know. The two children were more tired than they had ever been in their lives, and they couldn't remember a time when they had felt so sad. Nightingale understood how hard this was for Justin and Emma. She led the twins to a nearby grassy spot that was shaded by some flowering trees so that the two could rest. Seeds, nuts, and fruit were brought for them to eat. Fresh water was carried from the pond for them to drink. Some of the animals stayed with them so they would not feel alone or be afraid. Exhausted, the two children lay down after they had eaten some food and drunk a little of the water. Nightingale stayed as well and sang them to sleep. She sang to them of dreams, dreams of Lunderia as it was now, a peaceful land where all animals respected and cared for one another. As the two exhausted children rested under the loving care of Nightingale, the other animals returned to the assembly. After speaking with the other council members, Tortoise again came forward to address the assembly. When we began the dream-seeking, we did not know what would happen. We just knew that we had felt much fear. Now, with a sorrow so great we can hardly bear to even speak of it, we know the reason for that fear. There is an animal on earth that is not only eating other animals, but treating them without any thought for their welfare. The earth animals, unlike we Lunderians, are unable to speak up for themselves, unable to tell the humans that factory farming, that mistreating and killing animals is all wrong. Fortunately, some humans, like Justin and Emma and their parents, do understand this. In our own ancient past, our ancestors learned that killing is wrong. And although it was not easy, they learned to change. And due to their courage, we have lived peacefully with one another since that time. Gazelle came forward and stood next to Tortoise. Dear friends, although we live on different worlds, we are still one with our brothers and sisters and people, beings on earth. In our dream seeking, we brought 2 human children here from that world so very far away. Surely it was their goodness and their compassion that helped us reach out to them, to bring them here. The Council proposes that through them we try to speak for all those who cannot speak for themselves. If our ancestors could change, surely so can these humans. We need to dream Justin and Emma back to where they came from. And we need to do so now because their parents must be getting very worried about them. As Gazelle finished speaking, Nightingale flew toward the center of the crater. Justin and Emma followed behind her on the ground. As they moved through the immense crowd, the animals parted to make room for the 2 to pass. As they did so, the children reached out to the animals who nuzzled them, gave soft sounds of greeting, or simply looked on with love. They looked up as birds flew over their heads in encouragement. Yes, our parents will be worried, Justin said. But can you dream us home safely? Asked Emma. Gazelle looked thoughtfully into Justin's eyes and then into Emma's. We dreamed you here without knowing who we were dreaming of. I believe now that we know you, we will be able to return you home safely. But my dear ones, we cannot promise this. If you would like to remain here with us, we will happily look after you and do everything we can to make your lives here good ones. Gazelle looked at both of them before adding, That I can promise you. Emma and Justin turned to each other and seemed to know what the other was thinking. Emma looked back at Gazelle and spoke first. We heard you speaking of the courage of the ancient Lunderians. We know it would be safer for us to stay here, and we would love to live here. To us, this is a world more wonderful than anything we could have imagined. But we cannot stay, Justin said with regret. We cannot stay even though we are not sure we can return home safely. Tortoise, gazelle, nightingale, all the animals of Lunderia, we will be your voice. We will find a way to speak for you on behalf of all the animals on our world. We have learned that humans are not the only ones who know fear, not the only ones to feel pain, the sadness of losing mothers and fathers, children and friends. Emma continued, We now know that many animals, not just humans, want to live safely, want to be happy and free from pain. Like humans, they too love their children, are loyal to those who they love and to their friends. People need to understand it is wrong for us to think only of ourselves. Wrong to think we are more important than other animals. Wrong to make them suffer, to feel sad and afraid. Justin looked at Emma, who nodded at him. He turned back to Tortoise and Gazelle and said, We need to help others understand this. We are ready to go home. What could the Lunderians say? They didn't know the words to express how grateful they were to these 2 young humans. But really, they didn't need to say anything. Justin and Emma could feel their thoughts. An overwhelming love and gratitude came into their hearts that just a while ago had felt so sad and empty. They looked out at the crater overflowing with animals and spoke together. We know. Thank you. We will never forget. With that, they lay down in the same place where they had appeared just hours before. Nightingale began to sing all the animals and the two humans to sleep. She sang of friendship and love. She sang of a world that needed help, and of two human children returning home. She sang of courage and thinking of others, not just oneself. And she sang of doing what is right when ignored or even laughed at by others. As everyone slept, Nightingale guided the dreams of all the Lunderians and of two brave, caring children. In a little while, Nightingale stopped singing, and again, as if one, all the Lunderians awoke. Then they all heard, deep in their hearts, the voices of Justin and Emma. Thank you. We are safe. We are home. We will always remember you and what you taught us. The animals knew that somehow things would be better on the world called Earth. Justin and Emma would tell others what they had learned. More humans would come to understand that killing and eating animals is wrong. Between Earth and Lunderia, the air seemed to vibrate as all the creatures on Lunderia and two small children on Earth thought as one. Love all beings. Picture here. Justin and Emma. May the goodness accrued from this work, from this practice together, help to alleviate the suffering of all beings and enable them to find lasting happiness. Justin and Emma, Lunderia. So I don't want to add too much to this because I think I experienced it in a similar way that a lot of people here experienced it. I felt a lot of emotion and connected with the teaching there. So what I'd like to do now is kind of we can sit together, we can meditate if we like, and if someone has something to share, then the space is open for that. But we'll just take 10 minutes, 15 minutes to sit and to settle and to be with that experience kind of informally. And if someone wants to share, they can. But after 10, 15 minutes or so, we'll wrap up and maybe do a metta chant to finish. Okay?
I'm in a position where may I speak? That's what this is, right?
Yeah, it's open. You can share.
I'm in a position a lot of the time online where, I'm hearing about a lot of loss of people, usually from drug overdose. And it's interesting in this forum just how, like, the vivid descriptions, the vivid insight into the experience of the animals is, like, just treated in such a way where it impacts me more than just sort of the endless barrage of names and numbers of people who've been lost. And I don't know if that's just sort of a self-narrative that I'm giving, but it's just like there's so much tragedy in this world that's sort of swept under the rug for all animals. And like factory farming was such a heated issue a couple years ago in my mind, and like it hasn't gone away, but like in a way awareness in some areas of it has. And perhaps that's my own awareness that has dropped, and I'm really glad that I decided to join this meeting. This is my first meeting. It was just really eye-opening and really sort of returning to a way I want to act more in accordance with sort of what's really going on.
Thank you. I suppose I'll share. Um, Very emotional experience for me, and unexpected. Certainly had to hold back, just crying, just having a breakdown, even from the empathetic response to the suffering of animals. I think is very clear. I don't want to add too much to it from like a to be above it in any way or to be experienced with it perspective, because I'm not, and I know about this stuff, but I haven't given as much attention to it as I should and as it deserves, and this really brought that up to me. So I had a deep feeling of sorrow and suffering and pain and just easily to overwhelm, and brought me to consider this more deeply and to keep it in mind in everything that I'm doing.
Can I share? I think just to reinforce what you've said, Bhante, I think the significance of that story is that giving the animals a voice as such, because, in our world or earth, they don't have a voice really, and they don't have any form of advocacy really. But that story really did sort of got me, thinking about they really don't have a voice on earth, like and that story really gave them a voice and really made me think, wow, we've never heard them. We know we just we see it, we know what happens to them, but we don't hear them. They have no way of expressing how they feel, their pain, or so I think that's the powerful message in that story, is that they gave the animals a voice.
I just want to say I agree completely. It was a way to bridge, to experience that conversation that maybe we're never going to experience uh, outside of a story.
May I share a commentary?
Okay, Chesh. Or sorry, Charity. Go ahead.
Yeah. The chapter when you were telling us how the animals at first were surprised from the children, and that there are sentient beings, and these children have minds and they speak and such. That rang the bell, the opposite ways, because seems to me like the symbolism of the animals is not just that they can't speak in human language, or their language is one that we don't understand. At least this is what some people believe, and so it seems that the author um, made everything vice versa. Like the animals were the ones who are surprised of the human children, and this strikes me as the irony of humans in their cruelty and arrogance about other sentient beings, especially animals and birds and plants, because humans have this attitude of believing they are masters of this planet and they own the land itself and they have the right to hunt and kill whenever they wish. So much it started to mirror in their behavior with each other, not just with animals. Um, Second thing, I think the book overall reminds me of something from the Arabian folklore called Kalila and Dimna. That book has the same kind of idea. It used daring messages symbolized under stories of talking animals, and sometimes the meaning of the stories was almost rebelling against social corruption or even politics sometimes, and questioning morality. So I guess I'm very pleased that you used this book in your discourse today, because seems like I was given an idea every time I got into Buddhist learning, um, that Buddhism would be all optimistic, or just be mindful, be positive, or it's the other way around. People seem to accuse the Buddhist faith of nihilism, talking a lot about suffering. And so, what I wish to say, there is a suffering in that story. There is bitter truth, and there is pain. There is selfishness. There is us and them kind of mentality, and separation in consciousness. And this is the very wisdom in itself. Sorry if that was long.
Thank you, Chesh. Thank you, Charity, for for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to share about this?
I think if I may sort of reiterate, like what I was trying to iterate earlier was like we become numb to sort of the things in the world as we get sort of used to them in one form or another, hearing them in one way. But like in this particular example, just the looking at things from a sort of different perspective, this story which gives animals a voice, it affects us differently, at least me. And like it's it's really useful to have forums like this group meditation where we get a different thing than like reading something on the newspaper or the TV screen. It's just it's more real. I don't know. Yeah.
So, with that reality in mind, we're going to end with a metta practice, kind of an offering and a gathering up of our heart. So, if you like, you can join your hands together with me and just following along, repeating after me, and we will practice this metta, this loving kindness together. Starting towards ourselves. May I be free from suffering. May I be free from fear. May I be free from grief. May I be free. May those that are near to me be free from suffering. May those that are near to me be free from fear. May those that are near to me be free from grief. May those that are near to me be free. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be free. May all beings be free. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So you couldn't hear the bell very well, but I ring the bell and we can all bow to each other, bow to our practice, and keep in mind this this lesson that we were also privileged to have today. Wow, causes and conditions came together, and we got to learn about Landiria, and may it inspire us to take care of ourselves, our body, our mind, to take care of those around us, to take care of all beings, and to speak up for those parts of ourselves that are not represented, that piece that gets covered up with suffering and illness, to speak up for it, to stand out. And in the same way to speak up and to speak out about the sufferings of animals, of children, of any and all beings who do not have the privilege, the ability to speak up for themselves. Okay? Thank you for joining, everyone, and see you tomorrow. Okay? See you again.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, everyone.
So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks for joining on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed that live stream. Take care of yourselves, and welcome to join us on Discord or just to watch through the YouTube, okay? Take care of yourself.